Do you think that dehydrating food takes way too long and you wish that you knew ways to make it go faster? Well, hi, I'm Darcy and I want to be your dehydrating BFF and show you 5 ways to make dehydrating go just a little bit faster so you can be a little less patient. So my very first tip is to start from frozen. Frozen vegetables, onions, my favorites, because then they aren't so smelly. And fruit can all be done from frozen. And the thing that makes this great is that it's a great first project for dehydrators when they don't know how to do anything yet. They first get their machine and it's like, what do I do? Do frozen foods. All the frozen vegetables that are out there have already been blanched, prepped, cut, and everything is ready for you. You just open the bag, throw it onto the tray, put it in your machine and dry. And it makes things so much easier and it's a great way to build up your stock really quickly. Even if you grow your own garden produce, this is a way to get stocked up really quickly when you need to, and it makes things go a lot faster because you don't have to do all the prep work. Now, yes, the dehydrating part still takes the same amount of time, but sometimes it's the prep work that can really extend that time and make it to where you're like, this takes so much time. But the frozen is the big tip for you for the day. So my next recommendation is if your purpose of dehydrating something is to go to powder at the end and that's all you're going to do with it, sometimes to make things go a little faster, prep work ahead of time can help. Puree that food. Let's say that you're doing raspberries, like in this video right here that I just published. It helps to go ahead and puree those raspberries first, put them out on your fruit leather sheets to create like a fruit leather, dry it really good and crispy, then powder from there. It takes so much less time to dry raspberries that way. That can take up to 3 days if you leave them whole in the dehydrator. If you do the puree, that can be less than 12 hours and that stuff is dry and you're ready to go and ready to powder. Another tip to make the dehydrating process go faster is to rotate your trays, especially if you have a stackable machine. Because the way the stackable machines work is that the fan and heater are on one end or the other, and the things that are on top dry fast, but it takes longer for the things on the bottom to dry. If you rotate those through, everything kind of gets its time in front of the dryer, and it will help make that dry a little faster and more efficient. Now, my next tip is when you're cutting and getting ready to dry, the smaller the piece, the faster it will dry. Like, I'm going to take the example of carrots. For my family, they don't like soft cooked carrots. They like fresh carrots, but they don't like carrots that have been cooked and they're really soft. So if I want to add carrots into meals that we have, like if I'm making a stovetop dish, a casserole, a soup, or a stew, something like that, like one of our favorites is cottage pie / shepherd's pie, depending on what kind of meat you use. When I want to add carrots to that to get them to eat it, if I shred those carrots first instead of cutting them into pieces, they don't notice them in the dish as much and it dries so much faster when you're doing it by shreds. This is pretty much for any vegetable that shredding it will make it dry faster if you can use the shreds. But if you're doing slices, don't do big thick slices, do 1/4 to 3/16 in that range to get them to dry a little faster than doing big chunks. Because not only do you want to dry faster for your convenience, bigger pieces like that, if you're drying them, tend to have something happen that is called case hardening, where larger pieces or berries and things like that are kind of enclosed will dry on the outside to the point where they can no longer allow moisture to release from it. And then you tend to have things that are dry on the outside, but never quite get dry on the inside. That happens mostly if you've got temperatures that are higher than recommended, because that way that higher heat gets things drier on the outside fast. But if you keep that heat where it's supposed to be, do some smaller pieces, things will dry much faster and you don't have to worry about the case hardening. But speaking about temperature, it doesn't hurt if you need to bump up the temperature a little bit to get something to dry a little faster. Remember that with dehydrating, nutrition loss happens with vitamins A and C the longer they're exposed to heat. So we tend to try to keep the heat down as much as we can to help preserve those nutrients, but you're going to keep all the rest of the nutrients. But if you're on a time crunch or you've got a lot of stuff needing to go through your dehydrator and you need to bump that temperature up a little bit, it's fine to do. It will help reduce your dehydrating time over time, not by a significant amount, but if you're doing a lot of projects back to back, it can help reduce that time some. But just remember, for things like strawberries and citrus and other kind of foods that have a really high sugar content, when you're drying them at higher temperatures, they tend to caramelize. sometimes burn, which is not the same thing as burning in the oven, but it can leave a bitter aftertaste. So make sure you keep those temperatures down, but make those slices of citrus a little thinner. Cut your strawberry slices thinner. Don't try to do whole pieces or like big chunks, and that will help the dry time as well. And as an addendum to this, remember that when you're dehydrating foods, you do lose a little bit of the nutrition just in the vitamins A and C from the heat. You'll lose some of the B vitamins and other water-soluble things if you blanch them first before you dehydrate them, but that's okay. Remember that once you turn around and cook all those vegetables, just like with every other preservation method out there, you're gonna lose all the same vitamins across the board. So don't worry, you're good. And my last tip is that I know that a lot of people like to use parchment paper with their dehydrators because when they buy their dehydrators, most dehydrators don't come with any kind of liners, or they only have one for a set of 6 to 10 trays. And the most common knowledge out there is to use parchment paper. You can put the parchment paper on there. It keeps your trays clean. It keeps your food from sticking. It keeps your food from falling through the trays. And your machine is designed to have that kind of solid sheet on a tray because that's what fruit leather sheets do, is that it's a solid sheet. Your machine is made to have the circulation that will keep those things drying like they're supposed to. However, it does extend the drying time just a little bit. Now, for one project, it might not matter. But again, if you're trying to move through projects, cutting out some time every project can be helpful. And I know that parchment paper is also very convenient because once you're done with your project, you wrap it up, you throw it away, and you don't have to worry about cleaning anything. But what I recommend instead is using some kind of mesh, whether you're using the plastic mesh like this or a silicone mesh that's a little more flexible, to put on your tray instead, because having that airflow through here will help cut down on your drying time a lot. Now, yes, you have to clean these, and yes, that can be a pain depending on what is on it. But if drying time is more important to you than the time that it takes to let this kind of soak in the sink and get clean on its own, then this is a recommendation that I have to help cut down your drying time just a little bit more. So I hope these tips have helped. Please leave the tips that you have to help cut down on your drying time down in the comments below because I love to learn from all of you. And if you want to learn how to cut down the stink that comes from dehydrating foods, check out this video right here. And until I see you again next time, remember, nevertheless, she preserved.